Hi, the focus of this video is to solve by square rooting, right? All of our problems will have a square somewhere in them, and what we need to do is square root both sides in order to figure out what the variable is going to equal. Before we can square root, we always have to get the term that is being squared on the side all by itself. So right here, I already have t squared equals 8. So what I need to do is I need to take the square root of both sides, and I'm going to rewrite it. The square root of t squared is just t, and anytime I take the square root, I'm going to get two numbers. I'm going to get positive and negative radical 8. Now, we did a lot of work last semester with these radicals, and you guys were getting very good with them after we worked and worked and worked with them. We shouldn't come into all kinds of crazy stuff, but we do need to break down these radicals. So if I make a factor tree for 8, and remember the pairs are what go on the outside, so this pair of 2's goes on the outside of the radical. So I get positive and negative 2, and then my leftover 2 stays on the inside. Now, I don't have a plus or minus sign here, and they want me to enter it as two separate answers. So I'm going to type negative 2, and then go down here and get my radical 2, and arrow out, comma, and then I want 2 radical 2. And that would be how I would enter my answer. Check it, and it's not going to let me check. But that should be the correct answer. Okay, so this problem we're going to do the same thing. I need to isolate whatever's being squared. So I have this x minus 23, the whole thing being squared on one side. So I need to square root both sides. So I get the square root of this, and remember the square root and the square cancel out. So it's just x minus 23. Then on the other side, don't forget your plus or minus. And this was radical 45. So I need to break down the 45. So that's going to be 9 and 5, which is 3 and 3. So I have a pair of 3's that can go on the outside. And then the 5 has to stay on the inside. But I still have to figure out what the x equals. And I have this minus 23 with it. So I need to add that to the other side. And just out of habit, I always put my number first, so the 23, my integer. And then I always write plus or minus 3 radical 5. Now again, when I type this in, I'm going to type in 23 plus 3 radical 5. And then I'm going to type in 23 minus 3 radical 5. So that would be what I would enter in that box. Right, this example is just like the last one. I have a quantity being squared, so I need to square root both sides. Square and the square root cancel, so I have 5k plus 2. And then over here I get square root of 64, and fortunately this one works out nice and neat. If you don't remember, you can do 64 as 8 and 8, which right there is our square root. But if you forget, you can keep going. 4 and 2, 2 and 2, 2 and 4, which is 2 and 2, and I have 1, 2, 3 groups of 2, so I take 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So there's my square root, nothing left over on the inside. and I need positive and negative. So what I'm going to do, since this works out to be a nice neat number, I'm going to break it up into two problems. 5k plus 2 equals 8, and then 5k plus 2 equals negative 8. And I'm going to solve each of these. I'm going to subtract 2. So 5k equals 6, and divide by 5. So 6 over 5. And the answer is going to ask me to enter a fraction. Then over here, I'm going to subtract 2. So 5k equals negative 10. Divide by 5. So I get negative 2 from there. And those are my two answers. Right, so again, get the squared quantity by itself, square root it. Don't forget to take positive and negative. And then take the square root, and then simplify each side. And this is my final example. We're going to do the same thing. I have z squared, so I need to square root. Square root of z squared is z. And when I take the square root of negative 16, remember, square root of 16 is 4, and I need positive and negative. But since it's a negative 16, I need the I. And that's going to be the only difference. So over here, we're going to type in 4i and negative 4i. And those would be your two answers. And now I've entered those answers and checked it. So if you have any questions with this lesson, ask me in class.